Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we have a standalone episode on Matango, also known as Attack of the Mushroom People, and that's what it'll be called if you watch it on Amazon Prime, which is, I think, where most of us saw it. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming book, California Tiki, from the History Press. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy! Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor in chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back. And finally, also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. She's also a member of the improv a cappella vocal group In Harmony's Way. Say hello, Julia.
Hello. I will stop there.
Hello. No, you did good.
Trying to
I,
break the
I,
habit.
I approve of your many choices. Matango is a 1963 Japanese horror film directed by Yoshiro Honda. The film is about a group of castaways on a deserted island who fall under the spell of hallucinogenic mushrooms that grow there. It's actually a terrifying film, but that's a funny line to say. That grow there, resulting
Not
in the
terrifying.
people becoming mutated beings. This film was partially based on William Hodgson's short story, The Voice in the Night, which was actually filmed for television in an hour-long film in the TV series Suspicion from the 50s that is on YouTube. And I have not seen it yet, but I'm definitely going to watch it this week. It was, people say that it was going to be banned in Japan because of the very, very disturbing makeup effects. It was released in the UK and it came out on TV here in the US. And we caught it on Amazon Prime. So this is a film that was brought to us by Tony. Sometimes we do this where we ask a member of the cast to each bring us a film that they just want to share with the rest, or sometimes voiced on the rest. Tony has brought us Attack of the Mushroom People. So opening thoughts and why are we here, Tony?
Yeah, I saw, well, basically because I saw it was on Amazon Prime and I hadn't been able to catch it ever. I think I had seen it on VHS around, making the rounds, but I never really watched it. I think it's on DVD, maybe Blu-ray by now. But yeah, of course, I'm a big Godzilla fan, a big Toho Studios fan. So a horror movie by Ishiro Honda was something I definitely wanted to check out. And I figured that would be a good thing for all of us to watch and kind of get our thoughts, seeing it fresh. I dig it. I like it. Feels very Toho Studios. It also reminded me a lot of, like, again, it kind of has the EC Comics weirdness and the definitely what we've come to know as J horror. I'm sure lots of people who grew up to eventually create horror manga and anime also were influenced by this, or at least saw it at some point. I can't see how. I'm probably sure Ito who created a lot of great horror
Oh yeah,
manga has seen
flesh
this.
colored horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
um
No, I see that. Yeah.
I'm not saying he has, but I would be surprised if this wasn't a movie, since he does so much body horror and everything like that. But yeah, it's the print that's on Amazon also is really great.
Yeah.
And it's a strange print too, because it's dubbed and it's done pretty well, I suppose. I'd like to see it uh in the original language with subtitles. I'd like to see it with really good subtitles to kind of compare, but they don't even translate the credits,
Right.
which was odd.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks great, and I really enjoyed it. It was a different movie than I kind of was expecting, and that's also what made it interesting.
Wow. Okay. But as soon as we're done with the opening thoughts, I want to get back to what were you expecting, but save that for just a moment. Julia, I'm going to go on a limb and say this is your first time watching Attack of the Mushroom People. So what are your thoughts?
It is. It is indeed. I thought there was a lot of delightful things about this film. I think it's not named correctly because it's not really an attack of the mushroom. I feel like the mushroom people really aren't in the movie that much. They show up
Right.
past, like, at the halfway point and very barely at that point. And B, they don't really never attack anybody. They seem like actually quite lovely, peaceful people. Like, they don't I don't notice that they ever do anything to harm anyone. They just are curious. They're kinda like, "Hey, you guys wanna come eat some mushrooms with us and hang out in the woods and, like, see visions?" I mean, it's kinda like the
Well,
Attack of
and
the Pot Smokers,
gradually
you know?
turn into a mushroom. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
but my
once
point is that that is not the mushrooms. The mushroom people do not care if you turn into a mushroom. It is the people themselves who are hungry and then go eat mushrooms, who then want to eat more mushrooms because it's kind of addictive. But I just don't feel like anybody's forcing anybody else to eat mushrooms after they become mushroom people. Anyway, so I just think that's not
wow.
really. I feel like
No, no,
it's
I'm
not
not I'm
really
not
a
disagreeing
creature.
with you. That's just blowing my mind right now because the body snatchers really do care if you become a pod person,
Yeah,
but
and I just
the
feel like
the
so we can talk some
fungus
more about
doesn't
that.
really care if you become a fungus. That's a really
Right.
interesting.
We can
That's
talk about it some more, but I just wanted
yes,
to open
sure.
with that
No,
by
absolutely.
saying,
Okay.
um,
Good opening
I think
thought. All right.
it's named incorrectly.
All right. Outstanding. Outstanding. True. Matango or the Attack of the Mushroom People.
So this is a movie I've always wanted to see. It's brought up a lot in several books I own on 50s, 60s horror films. So I've always been curious about this movie. I've never actually been able to see it because, for one reason or another, I guess it's kind of hard to find, or at least it was in the state for a while. I never came across it on DVD or VHS. I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's just where I was living, but I've never actually been able to see this movie. But I've always been fascinated that it exists. It did not disappoint. This is a really weird, crazy, trippy movie. I was trying to describe it to Jamie when we were having dinner the other night because she didn't watch it with me. Usually she watches the movies that I do with me. And this time she didn't. And I was kind of like, well, it's sort of like Lord of the Flies meet
Yeah.
Night of the
Yeah.
Living Dead meet an acid trip.
Mhm.
And and even that is not exactly a great description. I really enjoyed it. It's an extremely interesting film. I guess I have to give one criticism of it. It does kind of sag a little bit in the center. Like it gets a little slow in the middle, but once it gets to the weirdness at the very end, more than makes up for that. So I don't even know that that's a real criticism because I'm pretty much on the same page with Tony and Julie. I really enjoyed this movie. Although, and we can get into it later, I do think that the mushroom people do actually care whether or not you become a mushroom person. But we can talk about that
Yeah, that sounds.
when we dig into
Yeah.
the movie.
I have a couple opening thoughts about this movie. First of all, years ago I watched the film, and you can watch it on YouTube because it's so torn up in rights that it'll never be released properly anywhere else. It came from Hollywood, was a clip show that was played for laughs and had good movies and bad movies in it, but they would pick goofy clips from different films, and it was like Eugene Levy and John Candy and all these great guys, Cheech and Chong, all these guys just sort of ripping on like clips from different movies. And it had a moment from this film. And all my life I've been, what is this thing where all these groovy Japanese guys are hanging out on a yacht and this woman is like singing and sort of sashaying around, and they all look so extraordinarily pleased with themselves. This is the movie. So that was number one. Is I've had this screenshot in my head for 30 years, and now all of a sudden it sort of fell into place. And it's always it's like an Easter egg when you get one of those, when you're like, bam, I just was finally able to locate what in the heck was this. uh this movie is, if you are wondering, if you for some reason are listening to this show but you haven't seen this movie is, imagine Gilligan's Island, except for, unfortunately, there is a fungus all over the island that starts eating people. That is what it is, and it is very, very similar. There's even a movie star and a professor. It's fabulous. You
Although
know,
everybody's really pretty terrible, to each other.
well, they
They don't
start
really
out loving each other. They start out drinking, going, "Never, we are so wonderful," all to one another, except to the crew. The crew, what I love is when the crew are hanging out, they're all like, "God, what a bunch of entitled pricks these guys are."
yeah,
And Julia,
that's what I'm
Julia tells me
saying.
that's just what the crew is going to be like on on your
Well, I
charter
mean,
yacht.
even the singer, actress woman is a real bitch to the other woman.
Well,
Like from the get-go, man, she's a jerk.
there's a super power. So basically, you have the professor, the movie star, the shipmate, and the
Marianne.
skipper. You have a millionaire.
Mhm.
You have a best-selling author, and you have this pretty student girl.
Oh, well,
You
she
have the
even
Marianne, but you're just
The
missing
Marianne.
you're missing the millionaire's wife.
Yeah.
so even the singer, mommy, starts out by like scattering that dude's manuscript into the
Oh
ocean.
my God.
It's
Okay,
like,
Yes.
so yeah,
and
so
as a
that's how
writer,
the
I
movie
was like, what? How?
Yeah, and
no, but
he's
that's how the movie opens, right? They're on the boat, and for some reason, this guy is writing in a manuscript in a stack of paper. Like we already know from all the other movies that we've ever seen ever that you don't have a manuscript in a stack of papers by a window, let alone on a freaking boat. And then when like goes, quit working, and she throws all his work into the ocean, they all just he laughs. He's like, "Oh, haha,
okay.
my
Well, that leads
manuscript.
me to
Oh,
believe
that
that
was
this has got to
funny."
be a copy.
Yeah, it's
What
gotta be that he was just, like, doing a final edit on, like, a copy of it, and
and
then
he
there's
just lost
actually
his
a
edits
perfect
and whatever. It may not even be. Yeah, exactly. Because there's no way that this. I know that I'm giving. There's no way this writer is concerned about that manuscript because
Yeah,
or
but
that. Yeah.
he's like, "What are you doing?" But it's just either way, it just starts
he
out,
looks
"She's
like
a
he thinks it's
jerk."
funny, and then he's, like, kind of threatening to throw her in the water. Yeah, but it was just that was silly, and, yeah, that was a really funny way to start the thing.
Well, and it also is a moment of just sort of Toho Japanese style stuff where the pretty singer sings a song. So suddenly we
No,
have a
yeah, she starts playing a ukulele, and then she does start singing song, and then suddenly she's singing to a soundtrack because
yeah.
there's nobody playing the ukulele anymore, and now there's one of those other what's the other instrument that they always have in the, I don't know, but anyway, it's like it's not a steel guitar, but it's something like that. Yeah,
It
so she
probably is
suddenly
a
has a
steel guitar.
soundtrack. She
Yeah,
suddenly has a soundtrack, and she's walking around the boat singing this song.
right.
Well,
So at
that's
this
bound
moment,
to happen. I mean,
it's as though the movie is gonna be a
Musical.
sort of a comedy kind of thing, and but for what it's worth, in the '60s, this happened all the time. I remember in like The Parent Trap, all of a sudden the mom, when they're walking in the park, just sings. I was watching
Oh, singing
basically.
in Mothra.
yeah.
That's right. There's singing a Mothra. There's a song
But
break. Yeah, War of the Gargantuas. They suddenly have a complete song from beginning to end. So to some extent back then, you have this notion that the family's going to go see a movie, and one thing that you're going to throw into this film is going to be a musical number, no matter how much it makes sense. So you can watch it now and go, "Oh, well, that's silly," but you have to kind of accept the movie for what it is. And Tony, that's probably also true for the dubbing. Can you explain to me why the dubbing voices often have British accents?
I am not sure. I mean, I know that a lot of Hong Kong dubs, it sounded English because of just being a colony.
Mm,
So you're going to get people in Hong Kong with British,
yeah.
you're going to get British sounding actors in
Yeah,
Hong Kong at the time. It took me a while to figure that out, and then somebody mentioned it, and I was like, "Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense."
yeah,
A lot of anime dubbed in Hong Kong, and you can tell also it's British because I've seen some spelling where they edited some things, and
yeah.
they'll say things like one. I remember, one of my favorites, like the Superman. They had just weird turns of phrase, like he says, "Hey, you're insane," and the dub is, "You're quite crazy,"
You're quite
which you
crazy.
yeah, which is
Well,
very
yeah, well, like at
very
one yeah, yeah, exactly. Like at one point he says, "Take it easy," and I don't think he means like he's been making out with this girl, one of the guys, and he's like, "Take it easy." That's not like, "Okay, we've been making, bye." It's like, "Calm down, be calm, be cool,
yeah.
whatever."
Yeah,
And but it's just take it easy as opposed to whatever would be the right
that's a
right
that's
way.
a
We just both
Well, that's
chuckled.
also the era too. I mean, but yeah, I think yeah, and the dub's decent on
yeah.
this. It's better than I thought it was going to be actually.
My favorite thing is when they dub it with when they're talking about how they have instruments from Japan and the free world, and I was
Mhm.
like, "There is no way these people are calling the West the free world."
Right.
Sorry. I don't know what it said originally, but that's for sure not what it said.
I would I would
Right, right.
I would assume they say the West. And so what that is, let's get to the plot actually. So these
Well,
guys are. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
but also remember it has also a very, again, I don't want to hit it too home, but like that kind of weird EC Comics thing feel for me also stems from the fact that as this framing device
Yes,
of
that's
the
true.
guy talking, and he's in an insane asylum, psychiatric ward of a hospital, and
Yeah,
he's locked up, and he talks about it. Oh, he's dead, and he's dead. Everybody else is alive on the island,
yeah.
but
So we
we're
know
like,
from the get
wait,
go.
you survived, and he goes back to that, but that framing device is really haunting and effective. Very very low light. It's this voiceover kind of dub, and then it so goes from there, cuts to everybody on the boat. Here, we're going to show you what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't see his face when he's talking. You just hear him
Right.
talking about how
You see the back of his
he's
head, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I actually think that there's a lot of sophistication in how time is used in this movie because, they give us a little bit up front. After that framing device, we meet everybody. We kind of quickly set up, the professor, the movie star, the student, the writer, and the skipper and everybody. And the skipper has conflict with the millionaire
There's
playboy
a
who
lot of
wants.
class going on
Yes.
in this
Mhm.
movie. Like
Yep.
there's that's one of the things I think that I found more like the most interesting
Yeah.
about it. Because I think most of the Japanese monster films I've seen have been the Toho giant monster movies, which doesn't have this sophisticated of social commentary going
Yeah.
on in it. Well, at least not about this particular issue. There's environmental issues, and sometimes there's some light political satire. But this is the way they have some like the class resentment
Yes.
between the different people is very real to me. And again, it reminded me a lot of the way Romero would play with this stuff in his zombie film.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because they start out definitely, using all of their class distinctions on the ship, with the millionaire sort of at the top because he owns the boat and he lets everybody know it and he talks all the time about how rich he is. And everybody's like top of their game, which is also kind of cool. It's a neat concept that the idea that on this boat are a whole bunch of extraordinarily high profile people and like one pretty student that they just brought along because she's nice and pretty, basically. And that's which just
Well, the
strikes you
professor
honestly as
seems to be like maybe dating her a little bit or something.
the professor
I don't
brought
know.
his pretty student with him on a yacht trip. So I think,
Hmm.
yes, I think he possibly is thinking, I don't know what I can do to get this pretty student to be interested in me, but taking her on a yacht trip with my super rich friends, my best-selling author buddy,
But they
is
pretty quickly say
Yeah.
that they pretty quickly say that she doesn't put out though. So that was like,
right.
he
Sure,
can't have been
sure.
expecting
She's
too much.
but okay, so that it doesn't take very long though before they shipwreck. And so there's a long sequence that's the shipwreck, and I was loving this shipwreck. I thought it looked fantastic.
Well, they also, I mean, so everything breaks in a storm, and the tension sets up already before they get to the island of what they're going to do because they're adrift.
Yeah,
So everybody's kind of freaking out and starting to lose it a little bit because they don't know if they're going to get rescued. The sea is really still. For whatever reason, it's super foggy after this. And nobody quite knows that, they hear on the radio, hey, these people have gone missing. And they're trying to say, well, they'll probably look for us. But they have no guarantee of that
yeah,
because as far as they know, they think the ship is just gone.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then the radio goes out, so they can't even keep that up. So already we have this like microcosm of how they're all going to react to each other.
I mean,
And
just imagine, if you will. By the way, think about this in terms of real life. Like we've had it before. Like you know, uh, uh, oddly enough, Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper died in the same plane crash. So we've seen stuff like that happen. But if you can imagine, like Stephen King and Beyonce and
Warren Buffett.
yeah, and Warren Buffett
There you
are
go.
all on a yacht together and disappear, and the headlines are like Stephen King and Beyonce and Warren Buffett all disappeared on the same boat. Hope they're okay. And
damn.
by the way, can you imagine what that would be like?
Although we
Yeah.
don't know how we don't know how famous these people are. We know that she's like a cabaret singer, and that she's trying to become more famous. Like she
Yeah.
seems like she's reasonably
Okay.
successful
So
but
not quite Beyonce.
not
Okay,
quite Beyonce.
but she is famous. I mean, these are and anyway, when they land, they finally run aground. Well, they come near a deserted island that they swim ashore to. They anchor the yacht and they swim ashore to this deserted island, and that's better
Because
than
they've lost their sails, they've lost their engine, so all they can do is kind of drift, but it hasn't, capsized. So yes, right, so that's why they're not able to control where they end up, but they're able to anchor.
and very, very soon after arriving, they discover there's basically two elements to this island. One is that there is a mysterious giant shipwreck on the other side of the island of a big science boat. And the second is that this island is practically devoid of all life except for this extremely uh, quickly reproducing fungus that covers everything. It is awash in mushrooms and gunk, and it's on the rocks and it's everywhere. And those are the two elements. So immediately their life is not very good because they need to set about, you know, setting up a place for them to live and figuring out ways for them to survive and find food and do whatever they're going to do. But there's this feeling that it's not very healthy because these green mushrooms are everywhere. This ship they decide to move into is so thick with green algae and fungus that I swear to God, it looked like you wouldn't be able to breathe in it if it were real, and it looked it looked pretty real. You'd be like, oh my God, it would be so unhealthy to breathe in that
Right.
room.
I mean, it's interesting because it does turn out to be a Toho monster movie, but
Yeah,
even if it didn't get to actual monsters, it would be horrific enough.
yeah,
Like succumbing to mold and fungus
yes,
that aggressively is horrific enough.
yeah,
And in fact, that's why it's so dangerous. Mold and fungus in your lungs is so dangerous. There's not a really good way to kill it.
yeah,
Once it
yeah.
gets the respiratory
Yeah,
system
just
in
breathing
real life.
it, just breathing it can do all this damage,
Right.
and it's so and that's when you get to the first element of disgust, which is a big part of a horror movie like this, is this notion that just being a part of this plot is doing irreversible damage to me and my body and my relationships and everything. It's all being harmed. Disgust is one of the major, major emotions for us. And so the idea of something where the fungus is just impossible to get away from, that's pretty amazing. And it reminds us of plague stories and stuff like that.
That said, they do a pretty good job of getting rid of when they find this ship and it's covered in all the fungus, they manage to clean it pretty quick. Like they're within the
Yeah,
day, they clean out several rooms to make them
Well,
habitable.
yeah, I mean, they find out it's susceptible to the cleaning products on the ship, but in the
yeah,
same turn, they're pretty sure in a very typical kind of Honda way. Let's remember he made Godzilla that this could have been nuclear testing. They're pretty
mm,
sure that the ship itself was involved in some sort of nuclear testing.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think in
It's
the
a s-
dub they wonder if it's from Russia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they say something about this may have been nuclear radiation testing. They do say that. So this might not
Well,
be.
what's
Yeah,
interesting is that they say something about how all the languages, like everything is deliberately in different languages
yeah.
from one
Oh, that's
another, so
right.
you couldn't tell which country, which I thought was like a fascinating little detail,
Yeah,
and they
there's a
never
weird,
really
weird
do much.
science story going on here
Yeah.
in
Like
the
I would
background.
love to hear the story. Like I maybe somebody's done fan fiction of this, or maybe it'll be another thing that we'll add to our endless catalog of things we're going to write. But I would love the to know the prequel to Attack of the Mushroom People.
Yeah. Boy, that's a
Yeah,
swell idea.
I would
Man, that's a
totally
good
do
idea.
a Matango prequel. That would be awesome.
Oh man, what a beautiful idea that is. Because you could have
You mean like
just
the
as many
story of the ship, of the people on the
the
ship?
story
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
ship, like, five or six
Yeah.
people on this ship, and we've seen really good examples of that because when you think about it, all three Creature from the Black Lagoon movies featured a ship, in in unfamiliar places with a bunch of people at one another's throats, and that's
Well, this is a lot more
here,
than 5 or 6 people. They had 10. I mean, there was, like, dozens of
that's a
people
good
on
point.
the ship because it's a huge ship, and it says in the captain's log that they kept sending people out to get edibles, and
Yeah.
then they would never come back.
Yes.
I
So, presumably, there was, like, teams and
Yeah.
teams.
I do wonder if the creators of Lost ever uses if this was a touchstone.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
with the
considering
big
there's a ship, there's all the science stuff, etc. And it would have been easily findable. You know, it was on bootleg VHS. It would have been, you know, easy enough to find. I'm curious. I have no idea. I don't know if anybody's ever asked them. I haven't looked that up, but
it's a really, really
you know,
solid question.
there's a lot of touchstones to, you know, stuff that was on the island. I just
Well,
wonder if that was even some of the interaction. But
I
yeah.
and like I say, honestly, I think it's very possible that Sherwood Schwartz may have cribbed the basic the organization of the characters for Gilligan, just because it's just so obvious and
Mhm.
so perfect. But that ship, by the way, the whole plot point of a big shipwreck that you got to run around in and explore. It's spooky. That's fabulous. I mean, it's just it's a wonderful set. They've done a fantastic job creating this mold infested old industrial ship. This is just laying there. Um, and then we enter a period. Now, I have to mention somewhere along here we have one more flashback that reintroduce when things start to go bad. We have a flashback to right before the trip out, and that was what I was saying about how I like how this thing plays with time because it goes back and shows us the last happy time of all these people. I guess right before, which was when they all got together at a nightclub and talked about how they were about to go on this yachting trip together. And I loved this. Again, all of this is working for me. I got zero problems here because and it's fun. It's fun how the shorthand they use, like the novelist is there in the nightclub and he's working on his novel even at the table,
Which you know
and
everybody does, right? Like
well, I do. First of all, I absolutely. It's it's truly sad, but true. And everybody's just kind of hanging out, and they each come in and they pat one another on the back. Again, they're all a bunch of extremely self-impressed pricks, but I guess amongst one another, they're it's fine.
Well,
um,
this friend group to me strikes me as I see this a lot in groups of creative, where you have like a group of like successful people who have gotten together to and they're all kind of trying to get from the plateau they are at to the next plateau.
yeah,
They're trying to become more successful, and they're kind of a friend group, but they don't actually seem like deep down they really like each other, and that's really what
interesting.
seems what's going on here. Like deep down, I don't think anybody really enjoys anybody's company except for the professor and the student who legitimately seem affectionate to each other.
I was just gonna say, you gotta wonder what's going on with, the narcissistic movie star chick who's just like basically, I don't know if she has really low self-esteem and that's why she acts so stuck up, or who knows. But I think Jason and I both just burst out laughing when she's been kind of, hooking up with one guy and then the other guy comes in and they start fighting with each other, and everybody's like, all the guys are in there, and the other woman walks in and the movie star chick goes, "Everybody wants me." We just started laughing. And it was like it was such a funny line. But she's so full of herself, and she's just like really just delights in people desiring her, and which,
Yeah,
I think is kind of par for the course for somebody that's in
Well,
that particular industry. But yeah.
Jason talks about the Gilligan's Island thing. It does seem she is very ginger in the way that she has seemingly still all this great clothing, even though they're shipwrecked. Like she has all these really
that's a good point.
fabulous sort of prime era
Nice.
Elizabeth Taylor outfits
Yeah,
that she
yeah,
saunters around in.
by the way, I love her look as well when the guys are fighting, like
Yeah.
hardcore knockdown, drag out fight, and she's like, "Yes, this
yeah.
is."
No,
Yeah.
she
Speed it
is a
up.
I
delight.
really
She
like
is
this. I
such a
don't
delight.
have
That
this very often, and when I do, this is it. I love this a lot, and she's just such a jerk. Like,
She's wonderful.
that
And then
oh,
is
play
that's
that
so
all
against
good.
complete jerk, the other complete jerk who wants to rape one of the women, and he's like,
Oh, yeah.
"Oh, I'm gonna have one of these women, and nobody's gonna do anything about it." And all the other guys are like, yeah, we don't really know what to say to that." That was
Isn't that
just so
interesting?
gross.
Holy God. Yeah, I think that's the shipmate who says that. Because it's not the skipper. It's the
It's
shipmate.
the Gilligan.
Yeah, the Gilligan in
Yeah,
this one is a pretty dark individual. He says
yeah.
because he sees that society's falling apart. I mean, what you just described, Drew, about everybody, the friend group, sort of being users of one another. But the thing is, as long as you never get into a terrible conflict where you're fighting over the last bits of food, you may never reach the point where you have to worry about actually whether you actually like one another or whatever. But society starts to fall apart, and the Gilligan, who is, the shipmate who knows his way around, he's like, "You guys are idiots. I'm gonna rape one of these women, and you're not gonna do anything about it." And they all pretty much go, "Wow, that's probably true." I mean, none of them says anything. It's
Well, that's
it's
the stuff
Well,
about this
finally,
that
one of them
remind, like,
does.
yeah, this that all the like them sort of the morals of these
yeah,
people slowly starting to like degenerate throughout the movie is what really reminds me of Lord of the Flies. Like
very
Oh,
good.
it has,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah,
like I again I found all of that really 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 interesting because you it's very adult and
yeah,
I kind of I don't know what other movies this played with because I can see this being on like a matinee double feature back in like the early 60s and
yeah.
I kind of wonder what it played with because I'm sure a lot of their target audience was when they were trying to market this toward Americans probably would have been children, but I think all this stuff probably would be very, very, very adult
Absolutely.
for kids, like the
Well,
Well, it never
relationships in
played
this.
in the theaters here. It was a TV movie, so you would have caught it at late night or maybe the Saturday shows, but probably the late night shows. And I think a lot of kids probably would have watched it. I'm talking about teenagers, 12-year-olds and whatever, would have watched it and just been bored, honestly, by it
I think
because you're
so,
right.
but it is interesting. It having watched, and I was just watching a few different, older 60s sci-fi movies. Usually, a creature feature, one with plasticky looking creatures, does not have this level of sophistication in its
Yeah.
plot and characters and depth to a lot of the characters and how it all plays out. The Lord of the Flies aspect is usually not there at all. Even in, and we all love the creature movies, but it's pretty cut and dry. Good guy,
That's
bad
true.
guy, a little bit of conflict, maybe good guy punches bad guy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not, hey, I'm gonna be a survivalist, I'm gonna do this. That guy with the gun, maybe I'll take his gun. How are we all gonna survive? What
Yeah.
has come before? Oh, look, it's this all the plot stuff that dovetails into this, and then when they're all dealing with each other, that's not really there in a lot of creature features
No, you're right. It goes above and
from this era.
beyond. Well, and also the society, and this is me speaking as an American, but as I understand, what I've been given to understand about Japanese society, the notion of a group that is supposed to be sticking together and performing their functions starting to disintegrate and turn on one another is even more disturbing than in a society that's more built around myths of individual achievement and stuff like that.
Well,
So
that's why I don't even think this is really, that's what I was saying before, that I don't think this is a really a traditional creature feature. Because of that, I think that a lot of this is really just it's the Gilligan's Island. It's lost. It's not it's the group dynamic. It's what is it like to be in a group of people who have to survive on on an island who really, as you're saying, aren't really close friends. They're just playing roles. The creature's incidental in this film. It's not even the main thing. They don't show up until well after this into the second half, really, in any significant way.
yeah,
Well, in the
Right.
because
first part, it's almost played like a haunted house movie because you
Yeah.
have one of the
mhm,
more zombie-looking mushroom people walking around the deck of this rotted out ship, and it's really creepy. But it's not the same as if we were watching like like them or
Right.
no,
Well, that's why it is just
Tarantula.
like Lost, because that's what Lost was. Lost just had it was mainly character drama with some creepiness in the background. Stuff would just show up, and you'd be like, "Wait, what was that? What had just happened?" But that wasn't the main point.
now where
Well,
they start
uh,
to oh, go ahead, Drew.
Well, again, I just also have to think that this was probably an influence on Romero because like
Yeah.
the fighting amongst the group just made me think of the fighting amongst the group in the original Night of the Living Dead. Like the
Yes.
dynamic is extremely similar.
Right. Because they have an uncomfortable living space and they are running out of supplies. And
But in
Uh,
Night of the Living Dead, they have a threat that's actually trying to kill them. Whereas
yeah.
here, there's not. I'm telling you, and I think this is as good time as any to talk about it. I don't see a threat from the mushroom people. I
Okay.
only see
So
its mushrooms.
forestall that for just a moment because I want to get there plot wise. I'll say this like really quickly so that we don't waste too much time on the plot. But basically, to get us towards the final half when things move a lot faster. Because people are hungry, and the slothful shipmate eats a lot of their food supplies that they find, uh, they um, they start to give in to the temptation to eat the mushrooms. And the problem is that uh, the mushrooms harm you. The people who eat the mushrooms tend to disappear on this.
well,
A couple.
they also make you trip, which I think
Yes,
is
Yeah.
a
you
big
sit and
a
you
big
laugh,
when
and
you see burlesque dancers.
right. No,
Somebody
it's
Well,
do.
true. You
it's
have
really
hallucinations.
interesting to be watching this now and thinking this is the first time I'm thinking this, but it's interesting to be watching this film in this day and age when this opiate epidemic is so huge, because honestly, that is what the problem is. It's not that we need to give the death penalty to drug dealers. It's that people have a void and a hunger where they feel unhappy because they don't have money, because they don't have jobs, because they don't have whatever they don't have. They have a void and they're filling it with this drug, and that's very much, I mean, it's an age old dilemma of,
Hmm.
I don't have what I need, therefore I'm going to eat this thing or take this thing or do this thing that's bad for me, this vice. And again, now I'm back on I hadn't talked about addiction in a while, but yeah, I think this is a great metaphor for addiction, because yeah, the people literally are starving in this case, and so they're taking the mushrooms in and becoming addicted. But that's certainly the case for any drug addict, whether they're hungry for food or
Well, and
not.
it's a way
They're
to
hungry for
forget
something. That's why
those.
they do this. Yeah.
And addiction and islands have gone together for a long time. The Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey, included the island of the Lotus Eaters, where they go and Odysseus becomes aware that everybody on this island eats these lotuses, and they become complacent and apathetic and do nothing but eat these all-consuming flowers, and and he finally has to get his men off of this island because the people don't realize how much their lives are being destroyed by and that's and that's the Odyssey. I mean, this is so yes. I mean, it is an age old.
Well,
Yeah.
it's also interesting that we have this is in the 60s, so in the context of the time period that it's in, is that we have a movie about people taking mushrooms and hallucinating. Like you could take the monster stuff out of that, and it's still
Yeah.
really really. And I mean, admittedly, this is the early 60s. It's not we're not quite at, like the
Good
hippie
point.
era yet, but we're getting there. And I I just I was pretty, that's ballsy, the fact that they have a movie where, and then like the especially like when they have like the student towards the end when she finally starts eating the mushrooms, and she
Yeah.
has this look on her face of like complete ecstasy.
Okay, and
And
Julia, this is where we can have that debate because basically what ends up happening is one by one, the various people are enticed away by the last crew member to have gone and gotten into the mushrooms and gone, hey, actually, you should try these mushrooms. It makes everything a lot better. So in the end, you've just got the beautiful young couple, the professor and his student, who I'm sorry, I laugh. It's so completely inappropriate for in our day and age, but the professor and his student who are a thing now, and
Kind of. I mean, there actually are quite a few
okay, yes,
university professor and university
including
student relationships.
President and First Lady Obama were I think in that situation. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and a
well,
good friend of mine, and yeah.
yeah,
well, the skipper does actually abandon them, which I thought was
yes,
kind of cool. Like he actually tries to. He's like, these people are assholes. I prepared the boat. I'm
Yeah.
leaving, and he dies at sea,
Yeah.
which I thought was great.
It is really yeah, because he drifts back, which is even
The
more of
ship the
a
ship well, the ship drifts back, the boat drifts back, and he's written this message on the wall saying, "Hey, everybody on the island died, and then I just took the boat out, and then I died." And it's like, "Wait a minute." The guy who finds the
what
boat
an
that's
asshole.
drifted
I
back to
mean,
the
my
island is
god.
like, "What? We're not
Yeah.
dead. The
That's
hell?"
pretty rotten when
Yeah.
your like last message that you write completely screws like six other people. That that
Yeah.
is pretty hardcore.
After you already screwed them once.
But in the end, the young couple they go into the woods, and they are straight up attacked by the mushroom people. They're surrounded. They're tried to, they're enticed to take the mushrooms. The crew members who have already eaten the mushrooms are all sitting in this mushroom patch and laughing and slowly being turned into mushrooms. And that's pretty much an attack, Joy. I mean, this is like the zombie stuff at that point.
Yeah, the what I saw was that they just seemed pretty nice, and they were just kinda like, "Hey, come join us, one of us, one of us."
It's
Yeah.
it
Well,
plays out to me much more sinisterly than that. Like it's
I'm with
almost
you.
like it's almost like a vampire or something. Like hey, we're gonna trick you into taking this mushroom, but you're not gonna be able because like afterwards. Like they do kind of announce like, and once you eat this, you turn into a mushroom, which is funny because they're so almost matter of fact about it. But like
Well,
Yeah.
that's
also, I see it as more of a parasitic kind of thing. Also, there's a maniacal laugh that they have the whole time too, that makes it.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
super
just like,
creepy.
you guys are great. This is fun. It's definitely terrifying.
Yeah.
Like,
The fact that there's yeah,
Yeah,
the
you're
fact
right.
that there's no going back either. It is very zombie vampiric. And they straight up attack and steal the girl away. And then she eats the mushrooms. Either they
Yeah.
fed them to her and that's it, or it's not, they aren't just kind of hanging out. Hey man, want some mushrooms? They actively go grab people. Now, granted, they're being shot at some points, but I don't think that it's as kind of low key as you're saying. That they actively go after whoever's on the island and
Yeah.
make them mushroom people. For
I don't know.
whatever reason,
I
that's how it works.
I don't see it quite like that. To me, it looks like they are just go because I just don't see them ever physically grabbing anyone. Like they
No, they
just
do.
kind
They
of
straight up grab
surround
her.
them.
Like they rush them and attack her, and they're pulling her away.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
I mean,
I
they
Yeah.
guess
they
go
they
with them.
go actively attack the group and pull her. They knock her out, and
well plus
the main guy is like, "Hey," and he tries to when he has to go find her, and they try to rush him. He gets away.
That's right.
I mean, also like if we're I mean, not just limiting this to the people who are wearing like the full on elaborate mushroom monster costumes. The writer once he eat the mushrooms, he becomes incredibly aggressive
Mm.
Right.
and and
That's true.
Yes,
sexually aggressive
true. When
as
they're in
well.
the transition, when they're in transition between human to mushroom person, they are more aggressive. I feel
Yeah,
like
but
than the
but Joya,
actual.
so I agree with you, but that whole like Tony's saying, that whole scene at the end where they're being surrounded and bumped up against and complete that's I I just can't get around. That's really aggressive. I mean, they're really
I just didn't
she
see it the
cannot
same
get
way.
up
I
and
need
walk
to
away
watch
of her
that
own
scene
free will.
again. I need to watch that scene again to see if I can see what you're saying about them physically restraining her, because it looked to me like they were just kind of like, "Hey guys," and the other people are like, "You guys are really scary looking," and they're freaking out, but not like they're being
My read
physically
of
restrained.
that was that
I
they
need to watch it again.
probably forced her to eat the mushrooms at
Yeah.
that point.
Maybe.
I mean, they
But
straight up grab her and drag her away.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, Joy, I'm not I mean, well, you know what? I could watch it again too and see if
Like I
I
said, yeah, I need to watch it again just to see if I see
I
them
think you
physically
two
touching
just want to
people,
watch
because
Attack of the
I had
Mushroom
not
People
perceived
a
that.
second time.
yes. Yeah, that's right.
I
Anyway,
think you
out of the
just loved it that much.
yes. I have to say I really did. So the point is the professor gets away and he gets back on the yacht, he drifts a little while and he does get rescued, which was bound to happen eventually, but he may well have died on the way. But the thing is, he actually did consume some of the mushrooms, so he is bearing some tiny side effect of this unfortunate thing on this island. And so he has these horrible facial disfigurements from it, which is very disturbing. In other
And
words,
that
not
actually
yeah,
that actually made the Japan almost ban this film because at the point when they're just barely affected and their faces are disfigured, they felt like it looked too much like the damage that people experienced as second, like whatever the people who were more indirectly affected by the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs had those kinds of burns and scars, and so they almost banned this film for that reason.
well, it's
I
only
have to wonder if, I mean, maybe I'm being too literal about the imagery, but the whole image of a mushroom obviously is evocative of a mushroom cloud. And
yeah.
that's something I kept finding myself thinking watching this whole movie. And I mean, does anybody know if that was like a deliberate tie-in on Honda's part,
I
or?
I don't think so, and the reason I say that,
I
I
don't
think
know.
possibly the radiation. I mean, maybe. I think it's probably a happy accident. The reason I say that because, like I said, this was an existing story that had already been adapted once before, and it was fungus. However, I don't think that's an accident. I think the fact that, yeah, I mean, so my point is, I don't think they set out that way, but I think it's an accident that works out that way, and I think the linking of it to radiation poisoning is quite deliberate. I mean, quite because first of all, that Nagasaki, that's only 18 years earlier, which is not a long time. All things soon enough it'll be 18 years after 9/11, and I think a lot of people still retain vivid memories of that event being a thing. And Nagasaki and Hiroshima had killed like two cities. That's 18, only 18 years. It blows my mind. That actually always blows my mind about these radiation poisoned Japanese monster films.
By the way, I totally separate. You're talking about the director and kind of his hallmarks. The actress Kumi Mizuno was in a bunch of his films and a bunch of monster movies,
Really?
including like
Well,
Thor.
I recognized a lot of the actors from Godzilla movies that
Is
I had
that
seen.
so?
I mean, I'm not.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not astute enough about the history of Toho to remember their names, but like I definitely recognize their faces.
but she was
Hmm.
in Frankenstein Conquers the World, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster,
Oh, yeah.
Invasion of Astro Monster, War of the Gargantuas,
Yeah.
and even in Final Wars and I guess Mecha Godzilla. So even in the later Godzilla movies, but I thought that was kind of
And
cool.
likewise, the professor, now that I'm looking him up, he was in Destroy All Monsters and Son of Godzilla. So this is a guy that we definitely have seen, and he's a handsome actor, so he would be playing, heroic leads and stuff like that. But what a downer ending for the heroic lead here. He's
Right.
the handsome professor comes back. He's being held in captivity, I guess, because they don't believe his story, except for that he has all these facial burns, which who knows what 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 they think actually happened to him.
Yeah, they may think he had experienced some kind of trauma and now he's made up a story for how it happened.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. So. Oh, that guy incidentally was also in a movie called Submarine I-57 Will Not Surrender, which is a World War II submarine movie from the Japanese perspective, which I love. that that sounds extraordinarily cool. I have got to see Submarine I-57 Will Not Surrender. That sounds fantastic. 1959 that was. So that takes us through the attack of the mushroom people. I want to get our final thoughts, and then I want to come around for endorsements. And by the way, can I say just at the beginning, I love this thing where one of you brings a movie that you just want us to share. It kind of makes me extraordinarily happy. I just got to say, I have a grin all across my face. I love just watching a movie that is personal to each of you. It kind of makes it just makes my day, makes my week. So, all right, Tony, this one is the one that you brought to us. So, why don't you give us some final thoughts, and then we'll go on. Tony, what you got?
I mean, I really enjoy the movie. I'm glad that it came out in a way that was easy for all of us to watch it. I am gonna have evidently there is a DVD out that has it's subtitled. And there was a Tokyo Shock, DVD that has commentary. Actually, there is a DVD out there that had commentary. I think I'm gonna have to track that down. But I really enjoyed it. I think it's really interesting how much of it is horror, but also a lot of the horror is the kind of, like Drew said, the Lord of the Flies aspect of it. They could have
Hmm.
toned it all down even without the crazy mushroom people. It could have been a really evocative, horrifying movie. But bringing, I like monster movies. So
Yes.
having that is a bonus to me. I'll watch any Ishiro Honda movie that's out there. He's just one of my favorite directors. So I think it was really cool. I really enjoyed this. It looks beautiful on Prime. I really want to get the DVD, and especially if it does have commentary, because that's got to be really cool. I am glad, like I said before, I only knew it. I don't know how I missed the earlier DVD releases.
Mm.
That's odd. I usually keep track of that. But before that, it was always just, bootleg VHS. It didn't look good. It was probably from the TV version, definitely not subtitled. Having it to where you can, if you have Prime, you can just go check it out right now is really, really cool. Definitely a movie. I don't know if I'll revisit it a ton, but there's a lot to absorb, and it's, the colors and everything really pop. It's a really interesting film, totally not a kaiju film, but
Mm.
a really interesting evocative movie.
Fantastic. Julia, what are your closing thoughts? Mushroom
I
People.
think it's better. It's a really good looking movie compared with some of the other things. Like I think the effects, given that they probably didn't have a very big budget to work with, they actually did a nice job with the effects. Like when we were talking about the boat, when the boat is getting thrown around in the ocean with the storm, that was really dramatic. And it didn't, there was occasionally you kind of could tell it's a miniature because only because you can't make water look the same. You can't make water look the same splashing around in a small pool as you can as it does look in the ocean. But for the most part, everything they could do, they did. I mean, it felt very atmospheric. The fog felt real. The places I couldn't really tell when it was on location, in a practical set versus a stage set. I thought it looked really good. I thought for the most part the acting seemed great. I mean, I didn't get to hear it. I would have liked to actually have watched it in Japanese with subtitles. For the one we watched, it was actually dubbed. But it seemed like it was pretty decent acting. So it was fun. Like I say, I don't feel like it was really a horror movie for me. It didn't. It felt more like a drama that just had some creatures at the end. But I thought it was neat, and I enjoyed watching it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Drew?
I enjoyed this. It was a nice oddity. I wanted to see this movie for a long time. I was really glad that Tony brought it to us, and I'm glad that it was something that had relatively easy access as well. It's a very unusual film. I don't think it's going to be a movie that's going to be for everybody, and certainly if you're wanting something that's super fast paced, like it's definitely slow in some places. So if you're wanting something that's just like a straight up monster movie, it's not going to deliver that. But if you're wanting something a little more unusual, like it definitely hits all those notes. Like it's a daffy, trippy, weird 60s relic in the best way possible.
Yeah, yeah. And I found myself really loving this. I think often about the fact that if you give me the choice of extremely classy recent material that is very well made and wonderful and sometimes award winning, and or some strange cult item from 1963, I'll go for 1963 anytime. Somehow I just am just so much more interested seeing these curios, and this one, which I think has a lot to say about society and a lot to say about the Japanese auteur's mind in 1963. Just fabulous. I'm really happy that we got a chance to see this. I think when when I bring up like what will be my suggestion for watching something, it might be a very similar picture. I think I might go for a 1964 movie that has a similar theme. But I'll hold off on what that is in case we actually go for that. Gosh, okay. So let's come around again for our endorsements. Basically, whatever you are watching, listening to, um, just been thinking about, and let us know. So, Tony, we'll start with you. Do you have anything to endorse this week?
Well, in addition to what I was talking about last week, uh, two other bands have releases this past Friday. Monster Magnet has a new release. The Sword has a new release, and some people I work with in a group called Screw Attack, who does. I knew them through a thing they do called Death Battle, where they pit different anime and cartoon and video game characters against each other. They did a kind of Super Nintendo-esque, early PC-esque video for the Sword's new video that's really, really cool. So a band I dig, plus cool video game stuff that I dig, plus people that I work with who are cool. All that is really awesome. Out of the three releases, though, between Monster Magnet, the Sword, and Freedom Hawk, I think Freedom Hawk release is my favorite. I've also been playing a game for the PS4 called Ni no Kuni 2, which is a sequel to a PS3 game. Art, direction, and character design and animation by some people who worked with Studio Ghibli. Famous. They did Nausicaa, Princess Mononoke. Number of just amazing movies. But all the artwork looks like that. It's like playing a Ghibli movie, more or less, JRPG, with music by the Joe Izuhishi, if I'm not mistaken, who does most of the Ghibli music. So it's really, really cool. Ray and I have been playing that nonstop.
Cool.
It's really, really cool. So those are my endorsements.
Julia, do you have anything for us?
I can't really think of anything today. I haven't really been taking any new media in, so if I think of something after you guys talk, I'll let you know.
That's fine. That's fine. Drew, what about you?
Well, two things. One is a comic book series that is available on Comixology. It is called The Department of Monsterology. It is a academic adventure horror series about a college that has two different teams. They have Team Karnaki and Team Challenger. Team Karnaki goes after paranormal artifacts and does paranormal investigations like haunted houses and Lovecraftian stuff and things like that. And then you have Team Challenger, which is their zoological team, which deals with things like lost dinosaurs and yetis and things like that.
Cool.
It's a really, really fun series. It's on sale right now. They're having a Myths and Legends sale on Comixology, so you can get the whole thing for like under $20. And it's
Cool.
really inventive. It's got really fun artwork. I don't want to tell anybody too much about it other than the scenario, but I really think people who listen to this podcast would find a lot to appreciate about it. I think if you read my comic book, you probably would enjoy this one as well, because this one skews like a little bit younger in terms of like who its target audience is, but they're definitely kindred spirits, I would say, in their love of monsters. But I really, really enjoyed it, and it's called the Department of Monsterology.
That sounds fabulous.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it. On a more adult note, Netflix put up another quote-unquote Netflix original, although from what I understand, this is actually a BBC show that they bought the rights to. And it's called the Frankenstein Chronicles, and stars Sean Bean, who has not died yet. He's very famous for dying in things. He has not died in this yet, at least what I saw. It's, despite the name, it's more Conan Doyle than Mary Shelley, although Mary Shelley is a character in it. The plot is these bodies are washing up along the Thames River in London that are actually bodies that have been stitched, like taken apart and stitched back together, and which of course resembles Frankenstein. So this detective teams up with Mary Shelley to solve the mystery, and it delves a lot into the body snatching trade. And
that sounds great.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. It's very somber. It's very, very serious. Like, don't expect even though I think fans of Penny Dreadful would probably find a lot to like about it, it's much more serious than that, and it's much more of a mystery first and horror second, although it does have elements of both. But I haven't finished the entire series yet, but it's also really enjoyable, top notch, and if you like gothic and you like classic mystery, you're going to find a lot to enjoy in there.
I love the idea of taking what amounts to a fairly, like, one of those ideas that's like, okay, try this, and it's an almost goofy idea, and then taking it extremely seriously and exploring the themes in it. That to me creates some of the best genre fiction. Okay. I haven't had a chance to do much reading this week, because I've been trying to make some deadlines, but I'll have more stuff to explain about reading. But I got two interesting things. One, if you are a fan of The Room, which was the very strange film starring and directed by Tommy Wiseau, that was the seed of The Disaster Artist, which was the fantastic film that came out this past year. Tommy Wiseau is back with Greg Sestero with a new film in two parts. So it's really basically a two-volume movie called Best Friends, with a parentheses around the R to mean fiends. And it's apparently thriller horror, and I have not seen it. I don't know if it's good. It doesn't matter. I'm going to run out and watch this. Fathom Events is playing it all over the country, so it's getting its theatrical release in a couple of weeks. In fact, I think this coming weekend. So if you are into the Room thing and how bizarre Tommy Wiseau is, here's more of that, and that's coming in the next week from Fathom Events, and Best Friends Volume 1, and then Best Friends Volume 2, I think, comes out in a couple of months. So I don't know what that will be like. I will come back and let you guys know, but I'm definitely gonna watch this. So it has something to do with morticians. Yeah, go ahead,
By the
Tony.
way, I'm totally not mean to horn in, but I'm thinking about it, I'm going to append and say you should also go out and listen to a bunch of the scores from Joe Hisaishi, who I was talking about, like, who did the score for countless Ghibli movies and a lot of cool stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, his work is awesome. It's great in Ni no Kuni, but there's just so much good Joe Hisaishi music that you should check it out. He's fantastic. So anyway.
There was something I wanted to mention, which was so occasionally, does this ever happen to you where you remember a story, but you don't know where you read it? And I actually posted this on my Facebook, and I was like, I remember this DC story where the heroes go to this island and everybody's turned into zombies, and there are these weird eggs that are turning people into zombies. So the heroes get rid of them, and then when they leave, it turns out a few of the eggs have remained, but hidden. And so it's all going to start again. And I was so amazed by that story that when I was a kid, I tried to sell DC Comics a sequel to that story. But I was like, what was this? And I would go on Facebook and I would post, say, hey, here are the elements I remember. I don't know what super team it was. Can anybody recognize this? Nobody. So check this out. I went to a group called Silver and Bronze Age DC Comics Forum. And I posted literally the same thing I posted on my own thing. Hey, island zombies, little eggs. And 20 minutes later, somebody posted and said, "Oh yeah, World's Finest 225." And it was,
Man,
That's what the internet is for, man.
yeah,
That's
there's like
exactly what
3
it's for.
books I'm looking for that I've tried that with, and I cannot find these novels.
it's a matter of the
I
group.
just
Find
I just have to
people
find that.
find the group with the whack people who are as obsessed with the thing as you are, and more so, hopefully, and you will probably get your
Oh,
answer.
if they were able to give you the answer, they're probably more obsessed with it.
Yeah, I
I,
agree with you
I
about
would
that.
say. And those
Yeah.
silver people are into like Silver Age DC because when it comes to Silver Age, I like Silver Age DC, but I'm definitely more of a Silver Age Marvel
Sure.
guy. But like I will say, like the people who are geeks for Silver Age DC are always very. I always find that they're always way more knowledgeable for some reason.
Yeah.
Like they have like a much more like. They can recall that trivia like a motherfucker. Like it just comes right out. And
Yeah.
Marvel, that is definitely I don't know which company actually makes better comics. I think that's subjective. But in terms of fandom, I think when it comes to Silver Age stuff, like DC fans have their stuff down. Like they're like scholars about that stuff.
I don't
I
agree
feel
with
like
you.
that. Huh?
I agree with you totally. Also, it's kind
Yeah.
of just a weirder. It's a way more of a strange duck for a
Yeah.
lot, and a lot of that, like that's not a knock. It's just Silver Age DC has it. It's just its thing, man.
Yeah. Well, and
And
the books are a lot less connected to one another in a sense. So, I challenge anybody to like remember all the continuity of the Justice League, right? Of course, it
I'm sure
also means
somebody does.
yeah,
yeah. But the cool
yeah.
thing is, if you can get your
Mark
hands
Wade does.
yes. But if you wind up with a giant stack of Justice League, you can read them all together. They all go together. They're not connected to anything else, and it's just sort of delightful. Um, and I find a lot of young people are into Silver and Bronze Age DC because those comics are a lot of fun, And again, there's no crossovers. So you can just get a whole bunch of one book, and they're really fun to read, which gets harder after the 90s, or really in the late 90s, when suddenly everything is events all the time, crossing over different uh
Well, I mean, I
different
don't think
series.
DC really tried to compete with the Marvel universe in any real way until you got into the 80s. Like, I don't think they were thinking like that. I think, DC by virtue of having Stan Lee, kind of pulling,
Yeah.
as a
You
line
mean Marvel?
editor, as
Marvel
a
by
line
by
editor.
virtue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the reason why Marvel was able to do what they were able to do with all the interconnectivity is because they had, Jack Kirby drawing most of the books. They basically had Stan Lee writing and editing all of
Yeah.
them. So they're going to have this consistent
Yeah.
tone throughout them. And, like God, I don't think DC really tried to get in and compete in that way. Like I still maintain though. Not trying to start a DC versus Marvel fight though.
No,
As much as I
sure, no.
do like some of those Silver Age DC comics, and I do like a lot of them. Lee Kirby, Fantastic Four, most inventive comic book, throughout the history of comic books. To me, that's still the best. Although this is veering wildly into a completely different topic. We were talking about have a whole other podcast about Silver Age comic books.
Yeah, but no, but you didn't finish your thought. There was
Well,
something you still.
I think it's crazy. Sorry, I think as crazy as some of the DC stuff is, I feel like Lee Kirby Fantastic Four is the same level of crazy, but it's focused craziness because there's like this like lightning rod perfection. Like to me, those are the best comics ever made. Like I reread those comics like that entire run at least once a year. Like I love those. That's actually, I'm adding that in. That's our third endorsement. Go read Lee Kirby Fantastic Four.
Got it. Okay, by the way, just to close out that DC thing, I was just realizing the other day that the Steve Englehart arc of Batman that ended up sort of influencing so much stuff. I'm talking about the reinvention of Clayface and Lucius Fox and his importance, and Silver Sable, the girlfriend, and all that stuff with
I mean,
Bruce
Silver St.
Wayne.
Clair.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
Silver Sable's a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Silver St. Clair and Bruce giving up the Wayne Manor and going to live in a groovy condo. All that stuff was in that one arc that lasted, and I am not making this up, less than 6 months. It's so funny how sometimes you can catch lightning in a bottle, and a creative team can come in and just do amazing stuff, and then they just throw up their hands and go away, and they leave these seismic waves that affect everything forever,
You
forever.
know what?
Yeah,
I want to put something out there because I know it's something I've talked to you about well, when we're both at cons, and I want to put this out for to get some of our Facebook people to comment and see if they would say this. I have periodically brought up, because we're all comic book people as well as horror people, and I
yeah.
periodically brought up occasionally doing like a spin-off podcast about superheroes. Would any of our if any of our listeners would be interested in listening to us yammer on about superheroes the way we're yammering on right now, please let us know on Facebook, because I would love an excuse to do that.
I'd love to hear what people would say. Okay, uh, but that's the end of our episode on Attack of the Mushroom People, and we are so thrilled. If you're listening and you want to engage with us on any of this, or make more recommendations, because we love recommendations and we love getting on the Facebook page and engaging with listeners. Come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Leave reviews. Find your friends, feed them mushrooms, and force them to listen to the show.
Oh,
And
here we
No,
are
no,
again.
no.
and
Attack of the Jason Henderson people.
we are what would be the Jason Henderson people? Okay, I anyway, thank you very much. Have a fabulous week. I imagine we might actually take off. Well, we might be back next week. I don't know. It depends on how Easter Sunday is going for everybody,
Oh,
but it might be
geez,
2 weeks.
yeah.
So I don't know. Okay, we'll figure that out. But I don't even know we're back yet. So the suspense is killing all of us. Have a fantastic week and happy Easter if we don't see you before then. Bye, guys.
Good night.
Night.
All right.
Bye.